Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us for this latest episode of Startups Unedited. I am pretty excited to be joined by my friend, brother. We've worked together, we've cried together, Max Altschuler, who is a serial entrepreneur, operator, now turned venture capitalist, which is interesting. We'll dive into that real quick. And here's the thing, Max, like everyone knows you that's watching the show, right? Like if they haven't heard of you, they haven't been watching the show, they haven't been on LinkedIn, they haven't been in SaaS and go to market, I would say at least, in the last, 10 years or so. So we won't dive in to your background here. Maybe we'll just dive into some of the strategic insights that we are going to dive into here today. But I wanted to ask you quickly, like, what was that transition from operator to VC like? Is there anything that's really stood out so far?
Yeah, good to be here with you, man. It's been, I think I've known you now for almost 15 years. It's crazy. All through the sales hacker, startup sales days and everything. So always fun. It's been, an interesting change of pace, I'd say. A lot of people, I get a lot of GTM leaders that come up to me and say, hey, I want to get in a VC, when I'm done with this stint, when I'm ready to retire or whatever it is, and like calm down, chill out. And I look at Paul and I look at a bunch of my colleagues and I'm like, calm down. Like this, I'm working harder than I ever worked. I just had Bill Binch on a podcast recently and, we were laughing about the same thing. Like he's on a plane all the time. I'm on a plane all the time. I mean, there's a lot that goes into this. It's fundraising, it's firm building, it's deploying capital into great companies, it's supporting those companies. It is, I'd say like, the pressure to hit a number at the end of the quarter isn't the same. I think when you're like a CRO, a CMO, and you've got these numbers, it certainly feels different there, but you still have to get the job done and make great investments, not just deploy capital, but like do it well, not just invest in companies, but support them meaningfully. And we take a lot of pride in doing that well. So like the team works very hard. And I'd say that it's just very different. I think what I like most in my generalist entrepreneur way is I love the diversity of mind share. Like it's just, you're always doing something different. One day it's fun. 1 second it's fundraising. The next second it's investing. The next second it's supporting a portfolio company. And the next minute it's a founder having a problem with this. The next minute it's a founder having a problem with that. Like they're just very different issues across different companies. 1 minute it's working with a company to figure out go to market for a generative engine optimization product that just is like the future of SEO, which is now GEO. And then the phone call after that, I'm working with a company that's doing containerized data centers that they're putting on oil rigs in the middle of the ocean. Like it's just very different businesses, and there's a lot of fun to that. I think what I miss most about being inside of an organization in the SaaS world specifically is just I loved to compete. I love the competition. For me, the outreach versus sales loft days were so fun. It was a blast. It was a lot of WWF in a lot of ways, where it was like I think we made a lot more of it on LinkedIn than it really was, but it was fun when you have like a really good close competitor, and the kind of camaraderie and morale it drives internally that's kind of second to none. It's hard to get when you're not in a company.
Those were certainly interesting days. And I think one of the things that is so unique about Go-to-Market Fund or GTMfund is the fact that as I hear you speak to the way that you support your investments or your portfolio companies, it sounds very much like I think what was one of the differentiators or one of the unique kind of advantages of going with GTMfund is that you are so hands-on. You have this LP network that is full of the top experts in go-to-market in the respective kind of fields or operations, and you're really helping. And I think this is a huge distinction, because back in the day, certainly when I got into this game, 20 something years ago, it was like, hey, I'm going to write you a check and I'll see you later. And it was like, that was it. Right.
Yeah.
And maybe they showed up to board meetings and maybe wrote some emails every once in a while, and you had to like do investor updates, etc. But it wasn't this active thing. And I think that's one of the biggest things that I've seen just in general in venture, that you have folks like yourself that are really at the leading edge of this, supporting those founders. And so that makes a lot of sense. The other piece for the folks out there is just kind of how you've been able to build also a media brand in GTM now that's part of the fund, that not only helps kind of distribute these insights and learnings, and has, for me, it's like very educational, right? It's like, you want to learn something, go to GTM now and look up the category or the topic. But it's also, it looks like a great way to also promote the folks that are in your portfolio companies.
Yeah. It's it's one of those things where we have the media, we have the community. So I'll take a step back for a sec. We have what we'd consider a flywheel. So it's fund, community, media. And the fund has 300 GTM leaders, makes investments, has 300 GTM leaders. That's what we call our community. So that's like a separate part of the flywheel. And then we've got the media entity, which has 50,000 subscribers, 50,000 plus, whatever it is. Number one, like a top 1% podcast in the world. And when you add all these things up, you get, the media company puts all the GTM leaders on a pedestal. We're able to put our amazing VPs and CROs on a podcast, get them out there, get their education out there. That drives eyeballs for founders or other GTM leaders. They come into us. They either want to invest in the fund or they want to raise money from the fund. So then the funds turn to come in, support those companies, turn those into the GTM leaders of tomorrow. Those people go on the podcast, right? Like, there's just kind of this flywheel, that works there and has a ton of momentum. The media part's an integral piece of that. We bought back Sales Hacker from Outreach, relaunched it as GTM Now, cleaned it up, got rid of some stuff that kind of we didn't align with or didn't agree with, and rebranded it, reskinned it, and repurposed it. And now, I feel like it's humming. Sophie's doing a fantastic job there, but it is a core piece of what we do. I think like having the community and the media elements for us allow us to really massively differentiate in the marketplace and become a platform that, our portfolio companies are too early to do for themselves. So we can do it on our own and then provide it to them. So we help them with customer intros, candidate placement, overall, GTM advice. And we're able to do that through those networks, whether it be our GTM leaders specifically or through this kind of broader network that we've created on the media entity.
That's awesome. And I think you've been able to do it at a scale and in a way that is something that we haven't seen, right? I mean, we just haven't, Max. We haven't seen. I mean, Andreessen, they've done some interesting things. They're obviously massive and those sort of things. But like the way y'all have done this is incredible. And shout out to Sophie there, because the video content is absolutely incredible. I think I'm like watching some kind of MTV show or something, and I'm like, oh no, this is GTM.
Oh, we knew that. We knew George would appreciate that. That was the whole reason why we put so much into it. No, you're the video guy. So it's funny you mention Andreessen. They just raised $15 billion, and they've been talking about the platform that they create. And seeing that message from them really resonated, because like we are doing the same thing on a smaller scale for seed stage companies. We feel like we're building a platform for our portfolio companies that they couldn't kind of build on their own, and they inherit when they raise money from us. Now, we don't have the political connections and other things that they have. They're doing it on a much larger scale. But to be able to like help somebody recruit their first AEs or engineers, or help them with customer introductions in a meaningful and scalable way, I think, is, if you can build that muscle as a fund, then you can replicate that across all the portfolio companies that you invest in.
Awesome. Well, let's talk a little bit about valuations and just really the impact that AI, right? Like, unless you've been, again, just with your head in the sand and not in technology, certainly, and really maybe not even on planet Earth, because AI as it exists today has impacted every corner of this planet. But I wanted to hone in on, if you're the founder out there of a startup and you're kind of trying to think about, all right, well, how do I deploy my efforts, and you maybe have some capital and I'm trying to think about raising a subsequent round and these sort of things. One of the things that we've seen is the LLMs have now allowed product to be built and largely democratized. The days, certainly when I got into tech 20 something years ago, the whole thing was, oh, go and find a technical co-founder, or you got to go and hire a bunch of engineers, and that was the most challenging kind of piece. Well, it was all challenging, but that was certainly one of the early challenging pieces. And it seems like now, at least early on, prototyping and some of these MVPs, and even beyond that, once you have kind of the AI LLMs kind of orchestrated with less resources on the engineering side, like, you can build product in ways that, again, but back then it was difficult. What does that do for valuations? If product and technical know-how, specifically in software, so let's just say at the application level, is largely democratized, right? Like, how do we value products? How do we find competitive moats that maybe were around product before?
Certainly harder now than ever before. I mean, it is increasingly easier to build almost anything with less resources than it ever has been. I think, your moats are user experience. Your moats are some sort of network or data moat that you may have that others don't. For example, like, if somebody tried to compete with Uber, Tesla's going to try to compete with Uber on self-driving cars. Well, Uber has a moat of the fleet that they have, the network that they have, an understanding of how people move and come and go after years and years of understanding, who orders a Uber and where they go at what times, right? Like, so there's all sorts of kind of this proprietary, data that is like a moat for them, essentially. I think it's tough. I think GTM is one of the last true remaining moats. I think there's ways you could build, and when I say user experience, ways you can build GTM into your product. That's a little bit of a moat as well. There's, the PLG motion that I think had its little heyday in like 2021, but now in the world of AI is like really the only way you can go from like 0 to 200 million in ARR in 18 months, like some of these companies are doing, right? So you're starting to see our buddy Manny Medina with paid, build ways for companies to scale beyond seat-based pricing, which is another way you can build some sort of I don't know if it's called moat, but competitive advantage in pricing and sales. So there's kind of a couple different things you can do there, but yeah, it is getting tougher to differentiate. That's for sure.
Yeah, it seems like what you have really leaned into over your career, which is being an expert at go-to-market, is now like more important than ever. I was having a conversation, and I've had this conversation a couple of times in the last 2 or 3 days, which was that, we've talked a lot about the consumerization of B2B for a long time, right? You mentioned PLG and that kind of stuff, but I even think that it's at a different level now. For example, Coca-Cola. My wife loves Coca-Cola. And what is it? It's water and sugar and some food coloring, right? And we could buy that on Amazon and put it together pretty quickly, right? So the sort of barrier to entry there to create the actual product is pretty low, but the brand, right? Coca-Cola is Coca-Cola because of the brand. And one of the things that you talked about was distribution, right? Like, it's everywhere. So in my mind, brand and being able to actually create partnerships and distribution channels might be some, not new things, but might be things that are more important than ever, which feels directionally correct.
Yeah. No, I think you're spot on. I think, even brand to a certain degree is starting to, I just think the cycles are speeding up faster than ever before. Something was hot, then it's not. That cycle from like hot to not is faster than it ever has been.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's one thing that, as talking to founders on a pretty consistent basis, I hear the same thing over and over and over again. What we built like literally 3 months ago now is either obsolete or about to be. And how do we keep up? Right. And I think
Yeah.
that also lends itself to what we were discussing earlier again, which was like differentiating your business has now moved uh, to these other things, right? So, the brand, the community pieces, those sort of things, like you can't really fake. I mean, I don't know. I guess if I thought about it, I could find some ways to fake it, but like I was working with a company I've been advising a couple months ago, and we just bought Gong. Now, I would argue that there are some pretty new Gong products out there or Gong-like products out there that maybe have a little bit of a better product in certain pieces or certain features, right? And certainly for what they wanted. But they were just like, they didn't even think about it. They were just like, oh, call recording, cool, we got to buy Gong, right? And it was just this thing that Gong's brand still held. And I thought that was really interesting because, again, they were looking at some other tools. Some of the AEs were looking at some other tools, and they didn't really consider them because of that, that brand. And then I was actually advising on some of the RevOps stuff, and some of those folks that were looking at it who didn't care about the brand, who were looking at it more from a functionality perspective, they were like, hey, look at these new tools. They're easier. They have other enhanced functionality. Implementation was easier, all these sort of things. But the VP of sales, the CRO, and the widely the reps were just like, no, we got to just buy Gong. So again, like this brand thing, it's a real thing. They've done a great job, and I think a lot of founders really got to lean into that.
Yeah, I agree.
Real quick, if folks are trying to, let's say, Max, raise money in this environment, let's call it pre-seed, seed, do you have any recommendations, any insights for those folks? Let's talk B2B SaaS founders who are now maybe, let's say, a year in or so, and they're really facing kind of what we've talked a lot about, just the competitive environment due to AI. And so how do you think they should approach fundraising today?
I'd say it's harder than ever before in some respects because the bar is higher. I think what you're expected to be able to do with less money and less resources now is higher than it ever has been. I think you should be able to generate revenue. I think you should be able to understand your ICP. I think you should be able to articulate, how what you're building right now is a wedge to a larger vision and larger product. I think, one of those things that we just talked about was like, well, can anybody just vibe code this? What's the moat? Mm-hmm. So like for dashboards and like visualization stuff that's not actionable, I'm way less bullish on those types of companies. I think like everything needs to be actionable that's being built right now. It can't just be a dashboard. It's got to be something I can then, do something with. We're in a company called Noble, and they're doing essentially like brand placement for modern SEO, which is now GEO. Mm-hmm. And
shout out to Rahul.
It's incredibly actionable. And I'm listening to Harry and Jason and Rory talk on the 20 VC podcast that they all do together. And Jason's like, well, Profound just raised a bunch of money for SEO dashboarding, and nothing I've used is actually like actionable. And it's true. We see all of these things, and it's like, here's what you can do to improve. Okay, like, cool. These are dashboards showing me where I need to improve, what I can improve. Like nothing's actually doing the improvement for me. What's going to help me actually do the improvement there? And if you do that, then you can make a lot of money. And there's all sorts of ways that founders are figuring these things out right now. So I think first and foremost, it's like get people to start paying for this thing. And second, have something that actually does the work, not kind of shows you where the work needs to be done, but actually does the work.
Awesome. Max, my brother, thank you so much for being on the show. You've been on this show multiple times over the years. I remember when I first launched it. Since we've been friends so long. I think it was 2015,
Yeah.
and you were rocking out at
Sales
Sales
Hacker
Hacker.
started in
Now look, dude, look what you've
2013.
built, brother.
Hacking sales is 2015. I mean, I'm just having fun. I'm still getting started. We're I don't know. Life is great. Got a great team. GTMfund team is fantastic, and they make every day more and more fun. So really appreciate them. And yeah, now when we first met, I mean, I couldn't have been more single. And now wife, 3 kids, 2 dogs. It's certainly been a journey, but it certainly gives you a bigger why for everything. So that's great.
Absolutely. Well, brother, big hug. Hope to see you soon. I gotta get out on the golf course and actually do something meaningful on there. So I might have to take a couple lessons before I get out there with you.
That
But
foot healthy first. Stop jumping off the bed.
for sure. So for the folks out there, I injured my ankle, so I'm literally doing this episode with crutches. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Go and check out Max on LinkedIn. Follow him. Insights and great content all the time. Check out the GTM Fund if you're an early stage founder looking to learn and then also potentially raise some money. And of course, GTM Now. Max, have a great day.